So, yeah, the iconic opening lines of that song, I think everybody's
Yeah,
heard that, right?
right.
And sets that mood, sets that tone. And then we get kind of an expanded ensemble here where we get to have trombone and trumpet and bass solos and piano
Yeah, you know,
solos.
when asked about in the early '60s, when Train was asked what his favorite album was that he made, he said Blue Train.
Hmm.
You know, and it's not as stand out from other records. You know, why that one? He says because the band is so good.
Yeah,
Right? Lee
yeah,
Morgan, Philly, the whole band, the way they're operating as an ensemble is just great. You know, the way Curtis Fuller kind of, you know, he probably could play more 16th notes if he wanted to, but he doesn't go for it. You know, he plays trombone stuff. That sounds great.
yeah.
How about Kenny Drew? Kenny Drew, underappreciated Kenny Drew. That guy on that record, killing it,
Now, this is the
bringing the blues
pianist
to
we're
it. Like,
talking about.
yeah, the piano. Yeah, yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, the pianist. Bringing the blues to the thing. You know, every once in a while in his solo, he sneaks out some 16th note, excellent bebop, you know, perfect. But he doesn't play it very often. He mostly plays the blues, and it's an important ingredient. You know, so everybody's kind of playing their part in making the session sound fantastic. Lee Morgan's killing on the blues.
Yeah.
The Philly guy,
And I guess
right?
we'll be definitely talking about him in our future trumpet virtuoso.
Absolutely, yeah, giant, legendary.
Yeah, yeah, great piece. Like you said, great ensemble. Again, beautiful, dynamics with the band, and
So there's a funny story. You know, in 1961, Train goes to Europe on one of his own tours, one of his own Europe tours, one of his first ones, and a French woman had transcribed his solo on Blue Train, and she came backstage and handed him her transcription of Blue Train. And she asked him if he could play it, and Train said, "No, no, I can't play that. It's too hard." He can improvise like that, but he can't like necessarily read that. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah, that makes perfect
And
sense.
she was a little disappointed. You know, and it sounds ironic to a person that like, wait, you can play it, but you can't read it, or I don't know what.
Right.
And maybe he was being diplomatic and kind of not wanting to, like, okay, let's see if I can read this for you, what you wrote out of what I played.
Yeah, the dog and
He might have been
pony show.
diplomatic.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, maybe.
But
But what
also,
he did do is he played the song live on both sets, and it's the only time he ever played that Blue Train live.
huh?
And so you get a couple of later renditions of him playing it in '61, and there's a couple of outtakes of Blue Train and Moment's Notice from the album, so you get to hear the guys going to work. Because if they did everything in one take that well, it's like superhuman, right?
Yeah,
And so, fortunately for us mere mortals, the other takes of Blue Train are good, but they're not that good. They're not as good as that one that's on the record. The Train solo on Blue Train, for me, that's a all 12 key solo that you practice into the dirt for sure. That's one of the giants.
well, that's one of the ways to remarket a lot of these albums, and also for the legitimate fans who want to hear those alternate takes,
Oh
because you
yeah,
get to hear all these other ideas and how the piece is formed and all that. But
absolutely.
generally speaking, you go, yeah, the one that was on the record it was the good one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's rare that
Yeah,
you go, what did they
there's
use?
about 10. Yeah, yeah. There's about 10 Giant Steps outtakes. Where you get to hear the band working on it, and there's Tunji outtakes where you get to hear them get the tempo right. It's each take gets slower and slower until they get to the right slow tempo that's perfect to set Elvin Jones up. And I have session reels for Kind of Blue. I have session reels for Milestones. As a questing musician and recording person myself, this is great because you get to hear these guys working.
Yeah.
Not just gods on the pedestal playing perfect every time.
Right, right. Okay, well, we got our final tune for part 2 here, and that is Moment's Notice from the same album.
So theoretically, he wrote this at a moment's notice, like, hey, I got a recording session today. I should bring an original tune in. Yeah, I'll write one at a moment's notice. Right? And so that's the lore behind it. It's a, well, to get geeky with you, it's a contiguous 2/5s is what the nerds call it. So you have the melody note's the same. It's a concert G, and you change the 2/5 under it by half steps. And it's the second 2/5, F and B flat, F minor 7, B flat 7, to E flat, that's actually the key we're in. So the first one is like a 2/5 that's off by a half step, but the melody note still works really well when you keep the G over. And, yeah.
And just to quickly, for our listeners that aren't deep into the music theory, just talk about that number system briefly. The 2/5 is, there's 8 notes in a scale, and then the chords are based.
2/5/1 is a cadence. So the most famous cadence, the plagal cadence, would be 4/5/1. And
which is a lot of pop and rock and folk and blues and bluegrass are all based on 1/4/5 chord structures. But jazz began to put in the 2s and the 3s and the 6s to leading into those other tones.
Yes, and the chords. 2 is a different version of the 4. So subdominant is 4, dominant is 5, and tonic is 1. So the cadence is subdominant, dominant, tonic.
So
but what drives music in the Western world is dominant to tonic.
Right.
That's what drives the harmony functions in all Western music.
And so
but there's the subdominant.
So if we're in the key of G, G is your 1. Your 2 would be A minor. Jumping up to the 4 would be a D. Right?
No.
Sorry,
4 would be C.
And then the 5 would be the D. So when you say 2/5, it's in the key of G, it's an A minor, D.
Right.
And then if you're
7.
in, a dominant chord, a D7. And so what he's doing is he's taking that structure and kind of using them to, would you call it chromatically shift things? Or?
Yeah, that's what. Yeah. Contiguous 2/5s are like the 2/5. The first 2/5 is off by a half step from the real 2/5, so they just kind of people move the 2/5s around chromatically to add a little bit of excitement, so it's not as predictable.
And then even with Coltrane, I mean, does it then kind of resolve back to the main key or the 1? Like after...
Yeah. The tune is mostly a normal progression. It's It's 2/5/1 for starters, but it starts on this off by a half step 2/5, and then 2/5/1, and then 2/5 built off of the 4 minor, and then he starts dancing around with contiguous 2/5s going to the flat 7, so D flat, and then he does a 2/5 to relative minor, C minor, and then a 2/5 to 4, flat 7, and then 3/6 2/5, and then he does a pedal point over the 5 as the back end of the tune that kind of sets you up for the next chorus, and then you go to the next chorus and it sets you up for these contiguous 2/5s. But it's mostly a standard song structure.
Okay. Well, I'm going to listen here and see if I can hear that half step shift there thing.
Cool, you will. Yeah, you will.